Thank you, Mary. Yeah, that was quite insightful. At any point, we're always looking at where our communications are aimed either at awareness or training, trialing or adoption to scaling. So what Mary said there is quite important. For anyone to take advantage of any trade policy, of any trade opportunity, you have to be aware of it. And there's different nitty-gritties that you have to be aware of or to get trained in order to maximize that trade potential. That being said, now we're going to have Alfeus Siyamba, who is our resident ATP or resident AGOA expert. So the topic that he's presenting on now is a build-up from what we've had before. On the 10th of May, we had introduction to AGOA and GSP, where we just touched on what the trade policy is and what it encompasses. On the 24th of May, we had pathways to US markets offered to sub-Saharan and African exporters through AGOA. And there we talked about product eligibility, rules of origin, tariff benefits, country eligibility, and policy statuses, expiries, and so on and so forth. Now we're just going to look at the economic transformational power that this trade policy possesses. And after this webinar, the next three that will be coming up will be specific to agricultural industry, textiles industry, and manufacturing and packaged goods industry, where we literally take you step by step into where you start, what you need to get ready on the export side, and also for those on the US side who are looking to buy African products, what they need to look for, the documentations, and so on and so forth. So you will need to watch this whole series or partake of it fully to get the full picture. That being said, also ATP is always ready to assist our members to handhold them and take them through the whole step. So I think I will hand over to you now, Mr. Alfeus Siyamba, and take it away, sir. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you very much for this opportunity to be able to share with everyone regarding the potential that AGOA and GSP possesses to transform economies, particularly in Africa, as well as how it can empower the US partner traders or US importers. So I see that the room is quite well attended, and we have a couple of different business people, I like to believe that, and that are much interested in the opportunities being offered under GSP and AGOA. Now, I will, for the sake of smooth transitioning, I will just take off the video, and I will go straight into the presentation. I'll try to take it to you in a brief manner because of our time slots, and we would like to have an interactive engagement this afternoon, as we're quite aware that the rest of our team that's in the US will also join some of the panel discussions. So not to take much of time, let's just dive into this presentation. Can we go to the first slide, Stendai? And then the next, the introductory slide. So there we have our topic, the transformational potential AGOA and GSP opportunity presents African countries and US importers. And let's just go to the outline. This is how the presentation is going to look. We will go into introduction and overview of trade between Africa and the US, and then we have economic transformation opportunities for African countries under AGOA and GSP, and we'll move on to the similar opportunities that AGOA and GSP offers for importers in the US. And we will then round it off with some recommendations and a conclusion. So let's go to the introductory part. So we're quite aware, I think most of you are quite aware what AGOA really and GSP represent. This is just the trade agreement that the US government has enacted in order to supplement and to strengthen and empower business activities between the US and the African continent with an act. And it's been long coming, and we are in the phase of the renewal, second renewal, and we're moving on to various other trade agreements coupled with these AGOA and GSP. So I will highlight much more in my next slide what has transpired so far. In the past 3 years, we see that the trend has consistently increased in terms of what the trade relationship has looked like with sub-Saharan Africa and the US. And we can move on to the next slide. Yes, I would like to focus a little bit here, where we see what activities the US government has embarked upon in Africa, or the main objective in line with the GSP and AGOA. This whole partnership is aimed at strengthening economic cooperation between the US and the African nations, particularly those that are in sub-Sahara. Now, the economic strengthening cooperation seeks to strengthen US government worker-centered trade policy and roll it out to beneficiation with various partners. Now, another key element of these engagements, or the objectives of the US government, is really promoting inclusivity in terms of growth, economic growth. This is really to foster sustainable development initiatives and promote regional integration, and making sure that various people across the United States and Africa can benefit from this opportunity. And we will dive into a few aspects of that. But particularly in this phase that we're looking at post-COVID-19 recovery efforts that are being geared to restore businesses and to empower nations and the economies. All right, and then another aspect is really about the coordination around the annual interagency AGOA country eligibility review. And that's really aimed at making sure that the participating or benefiting countries still stay within the confinements of the requirements, and that nothing is really being conducted in a manner that is not prescribed efforts or programs of the Act. And this brings us to a point where we see that the statutory requirements that the US government has laid out really is to govern the activities between member countries that are participating, as well as the businesses, that we conduct business in a manner that is really transparent and not conflicted in any way or form. Now, lastly, the fourth component or focus area is really to resolve trade and investment barriers across the continent of Africa. So what we have is really to say we seek to see that there are various barriers that do not allow companies or countries to trade freely with the US. And there were various limitations. So in this, we have some relaxed requirements to enable that capacity building to open up the US market for many African countries, particularly those that are in sub-Saharan Africa. So let's move into the overview of trade between US and Africa under AGOA and GSP. In 2022, we see that non-oil imports were a major source of trade between the US and African countries. And we have about $4.8 billion. And as being now more in the SADC region, we see that South Africa was one of the major contributors to these figures, as well as a practical example with the Namibian government. We in Namibia lagged a bit behind, but with the help of the USA Trade Hub that has just recently ended, we saw facilitation that spearheaded the whole process of setting up their national AGOA strategy, implementation strategy. And in such a short period of time, we have seen about 106 local companies exporting to the US in various sectors, pharmaceutical, agricultural, and the list goes on. And this is the very opportunity that AGOA and GSP is still presenting to the rest of Africa and the respective businesses. So we see that the trade of the US government with African countries has really provided an opportunity to develop capacity in terms of trading. And this is really to promote economic development in a two-way fashion. And moving on to some of the key elements. These are the opportunities. All African businesses from the eligible countries have an opportunity to benefit from tariff-free or duty-free access to the US market. And we are not just talking about a tariff-free with minimality. We are talking about having access to a scope of up to 5,000 products, and under GSP, and up to 1,000 products that one can actually take advantage of. So we encourage businesses from manufacturing, from pharmaceuticals, apparel, agriculture, and across various sectors to really see this opportunity, because all these volumes of trade, all these 4.8 billion is bound to be expanded to higher numbers. And this is the opportunity that is being presented. And this can really transform African economies, and not just African economies, but African businesses, because we will see that various economic activities will be prevalent in this process. There will be processing, there will be value added commodities that can be traded. And this is really an opportunity for African countries to earn Forex. And it is unimaginable considering the strength of the dollar with most of the African currencies. We can see that we really stand a good opportunity to maximize our incomes. And moving on, looking at how this can also expand our scope, because there are a lot of manufacturing activities that are required for the businesses to export to the US. So all these are potential for job creation, for various goods, innovation, and the rest, because we have a lot of raw materials in Africa that we can actually process per requirements of those partners of trade in the US. And this will create strong value chains. This will create other opportunities. It has a spillover effect for the African countries to realize various economic benefits that can really be derived from these processes and engagement. And then if we look at another aspect, really is to see that the sectors that are eligible for trade with the US under AGOA and GSP are those labor-intensive sectors where you would see that numerous jobs can be created through these programs. And these are some of those key opportunities for African businesses and economies. Now to continue, moving on to the value proposition that these programs offer the US importers. There is a competitive advantage in terms of unique product offering, as well as price competitiveness, because the US traders, the US importers, you have an opportunity to be able to get raw materials, to be able to get products at a very competitive price, at very low cost, due to the strength of the dollar, as we have already alluded to. And now you're sitting with a massive opportunity to trade those commodities in the US market at very competitive prices. And the unique offering of Africa with various products and raw materials, you can be fully guaranteed that you stand a very good opportunity. And that will also lead to market expansion and trade expansion, because the region surrounding the US market are also in a dire need to gain access to some of these commodities that Africa is offering to the US, but they do not have the same partnership agreements. And therefore, it really presents an opportunity for expansion for the businesses in the US as well. And this will also lead to innovation, because you constantly have to improve your product quality, your product formulation, and various commodities and byproducts can be extracted from these products that the African countries are offering, more specifically those that are in the raw form. And these are all business opportunities. And lastly, I want to touch on to the capacity development proposition that these opportunities offer. Under these various programs, under the GSP and AGOA, you find capacity building, which really strengthens various traders or businesses to do business at a very competitive level, to improve the dynamics of doing business, to improve the quality of doing business and business readiness, and various other aspects of capacity development. So the more the trade intensifies with Africa, is the more the larger the opportunity for the US importers to develop their capacity and have a wider offering and a very competitive offering. All right, let's move on to the next slide. So here we are just offering some key recommendations to say that as traders, both in Africa and the US, particularly under these trade agreements, we encourage African countries to continually just position themselves to comply with the key requirements for eligibility under AGOA, because these are opportunities that can cause African economies or countries or businesses to really derive high economic benefit from it. And secondly, also to consider that there are, particularly amongst the thousands of product listing, there are particularly products that are of high value and high returns. And we encourage businesses to start considering trading in those, identify those opportunities, identify those products that are of high value and high return, and focus on them in order to maximize the financial base, in order to strengthen your position financially so that you can explore various avenues. And thirdly, we would just like to also encourage that various US and Africa traders, we can partner with you here at ATP. We have very competitive resource leveraging. We have very competitive and highly skilled personnel, and we can assist in various technical aspects in order to make your interaction or your objectives of trade with the US much more smoother. So we are offering various technical support avenues. And not just that, we also have other opportunities in order to source funding. We have the means to also improve in terms of product offering, be it branding, be it marketing, be it analysis. We can conduct product analysis and other various services that may assist your trade objectives with the US to be realized. And we have a database of buyers and sellers. We have a listing of those, and we really compel and recommend that you take advantage of that. And moving on, before we just close off, we're saying that we are thinking Africa. So when we think of Africa, we are thinking about the uniqueness of Africa. Africa is a partner. There is no part of the world that does not need Africa. And when we think Africa, or when we think trade, we think Africa. And when we think Africa, we are thinking trade that is inevitable and diverse and unique opportunities and offering. And we think platforms. So there is always a hand that we are ready to extend to your business, and we can partner in realizing these ATI objectives and goals under ATP and our various coordinated segments of trade facilitation. So not to bore you, but we have come to the conclusion of our brief presentation, and I invite you over back to Mr. Tendai and to take us on further with the rest of our afternoon. Thank you very much.